There we go. Do that again. Good afternoon. I'm President Doug Saltzgaver. I'm happy to be back at Wakanda for the second week in a row. Everybody excited about that? We're with you here live, and hopefully there's hundreds of thousands again tuned in on YouTube watching us live stream. Welcome to all of you, and thank you again to Invictus Media for running our live stream system. As most of you know, yesterday was National Professional Engineers Day. So we have a treat for you today. Not only do we have one, we have two civil engineers who are going to be speaking today from the microphone. Both myself and our keynote speaker. Only former President Brian Schiffler were here. You older members, longer-term members will understand that joke. I don't know about Allan, but I'm tired from last night from all those engineering parties. Some of them were really crazy. People were taking off their pocket protectors. I mean, it got wild. I'm not wearing my mask at the podium so you can hear me more clearly since I'm safely distanced from you. But I did notice earlier that some of you were gazing at me with mask envy. Now, if any of you would like to have your own Rotary mask, we can make that possible. Maybe we need a zoom here on the camera while I'm masked up. Don't do it while I'm not masked. If you'd like one of these, let Kitty know by 2 o'clock today. They're a total of $5 each, payable upon receipt, but she has to know by 2 p.m. so we can get a group order in and get the best discount we can. And again, we'll be sanitizing the microphone up here between speakers. And I apologize to those listening through live stream for the incredibly irritating noise that causes. Probably even more irritating than listening to me. I now invite Jackie Norris to share a moment of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. Inspire us.
Got it. Look at this. Hope I don't get electrocuted. Hello, everybody. It's good to see faces. So in light of our speaker today, I reflected on the immense pressure that our elected leaders face in office. I am not sure candidates, when running for office, could have predicted a Great Depression, a global pandemic, or a terrorist attack on American soil, and yet they persisted. In the words of William Shakespeare in Henry IV, the Eighth? Gotta be the Eighth. Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown. As we think about today's politicians and candidates and politicians of the past, I hope that we continue to be mindful of just how hard the job is. Please take a quiet moment to say a prayer or send good karma to those individuals who have to make very tough decisions for our country in the months to come. We may not agree with them, but they are our leaders elected through a democratic process. And with that reflection, I will ask us to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Rotary four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And do we say hi to each other? Wave? Yeah. Just wave, I guess? Okay. That's, I don't know if that's right. Oh, perfect.
Thank you. All right, tomorrow you will get an email with a link to SurveyMonkey from our Community Service Committee. The Community Service Committee invites you to participate in this short survey so we can understand more about the profile of our volunteers, motivations, and some ideas to consider for the future. Please take the time to fill it out. It's very short, as most of these are that we ask you to participate in. The deadline is August 17th, so we've got a little bit of time. And here, in the very near future, Jeremiah Terharik is going to come up and introduce our keynote speaker. But first, I want to remind everyone about our new procedures for question and answers. If time allows, our speaker will take some questions today. And again, as last week, we have a mic stand set up over behind Kitty in the hallway. Please line up 6 feet apart for your turn to ask a question. And Kitty will again sanitize the microphone between questions. Please do not shout out your questions from your seat because we want everyone to hear it, especially those that are live streaming. And Kevin, did you bring the taser in case someone doesn't abide by the... All right, it's fully charged? All right. So with that, Jeremiah?
All right, well, I've got the privilege to introduce our speaker today, Allan Hoover III, who happens to be the great-grandson of President Herbert Hoover. Allan grew up in Sacramento, California, and he has a degree in civil engineering from UC Berkeley. Accomplished engineer. His work has taken him all over the country. He's got over 20 years at Kiewit Infrastructure, and he has lived in many locations, including Chicago, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Omaha, and he currently lives with his family in a suburb of Denver, Colorado. He's married to his wife, Michelle, with 3 children. He has a 16-year-old Mary, a 13-year-old Andrew, and a 10-year-old Thomas. Allan serves on boards related to the legacy of President Herbert Hoover, and he currently manages several residential real estate investments since 2009. He enjoys golf, surfing, and traveling. However, of the 3 activities, he is only skilled at traveling. Let me get my germs off the microphone for you.
Well, thank you very much, Jeremiah, for that very kind introduction. And but before I begin, I would like to share a story that many of you may appreciate. Whenever I think of Great Granddad and Des Moines, I always think of Ding Darling. Now, many of you may know Ding. He was a celebrated cartoonist who won 2 Pulitzer Prizes while he worked at the Des Moines Register. He also was good friends with Great Granddad. Well, when Hoover was president, he thought it'd be a great idea to have Ding as his guest at Camp Rapidan, which was the White House retreat just outside Washington. So Ding traveled to Camp Rapidan. They met, and while they were there, they decided to go horseback riding. So they both got on their horses, went down some trails, and then one of them, I'm not going to say who, well, I don't know who, but one of them had the great idea to ditch the Secret Service. So they did. They raced through the forest, ditched the Secret Service, and they came across a tall Ranger watchtower. So they got off their horses, climbed up to the top of the watchtower, looked out, and they found the 2 Secret Service agents desperately looking for their President of the United States, who was lost and gone in their eyes. So I always think of Ding when I think of Des Moines. So thank you for having me. And you know, I'm really pleased to be able to spend a little time today talking about Great Granddad, Iowa's native son, and also to talk about one of his greatest legacies of accomplishment, and that's the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library Museum. You may know the Hoover Library is one of 13 National Archives and Record Administration's presidential libraries, and the only one in the state of Iowa. And it's in West Branch, which is just about a 2-hour drive from here. Now, I'd like to ask, for those here in the audience in this room, and also those that are on Zoom, feel free to use the chat box. Could you tell me who here has been to the Hoover Library? Just ever. Raise your hands. Okay, great. How about in the last 10 years? How many have been to the Hoover Library? Okay, great. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, for those of you that raised your hands, you know it's really a wonderful tribute to our 31st president and really to all of Iowa. For those of you that have not had the chance to visit, the Hoover Presidential Library and Museum, it's hidden in plain sight. It's located just minutes off of Interstate 80 at exit 254 in West Branch, and it's just a gem waiting to be explored. The Library Museum is in the middle of a 180-acre national park, which, by the way, is just one of 2 national parks in this state. And the best part of the national park site is to stand at the grave site. If you haven't done this before, stand at the grave site with the grave site behind you, and then you look down the meadow on top of a small hill, and you see a corridor of 2 trees that form a corridor. And at the end of that corridor is the birth cottage that great-granddad grew up in for his first 9 years of life. It's really an inspiring sight. And not far from the birthplace cottage is a replica of his father's blacksmith shop, which is still in operation today, although I'm not sure with the COVID, if they're back up and running. I know you can go to the park right now, but as far as the blacksmith shop, when things are normal, it's definitely operating. And of course, also on the site is the Library and Museum, which is packed with anecdotes and stories and many items, all related to his incredible accomplishments of his lifetime. Now, those of you who have visited, you know it tells a terrific story of a small-town Iowa boy that overcame many obstacles on his way to making a difference in this world. It's a story of a Stanford graduate, a story of a mining engineer, another engineer, who revolutionized the mining industry. And then at 40 years old, he left all of that. He left it all to create organizations that fed desperate Europeans during World War I, saving tens of millions of lives. Then the story continues as he was Secretary of Commerce under 2 presidents, and then to become President of the United States himself at the end of the Roaring 20s. And as you may know, great-granddad is the first president of the United States born west of the Mississippi River and the only president from the state of Iowa to hold that high office. Now, after watching the Iowa caucuses earlier this year, and every 4 years, I guess it seems like it's every year sometimes, but you know, it can be said all presidents come through Iowa, but only one president, only one is from Iowa. Perhaps just as impressive is his post-presidency period of life, when he was called upon by Harry Truman near the end of World War II to help assess and feed the war-ravaged countries in Europe yet again. Great-granddad chaired 2 different Hoover commissions for Presidents Truman and Eisenhower that led to a restructuring of the executive branch and made the federal government more efficient. In all, he directly served under 5 United States presidents in addition to the term he held himself. Hoover was always seeking ways to be innovative and embrace new technologies. During his years as Commerce Secretary and President, he was the first to appear on a broadcast of experimental television. He also organized an air traffic control system that is now the basis of what we call the Federal Aviation Administration. He was also the first to use a teleprompter, and who else but Herbert Hoover had the foresight to see the importance of water management along the Colorado River. As Secretary of Commerce under Harding and Coolidge, he brought California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. He brought all those states that have water rights to the Colorado River. He brought them all together to agree on the Colorado River Compact, which gave us Hoover Dam and all of the water management and hydroelectric power along that system. Just Hoover Dam alone provides water to 18 million customers and sells power generated by its turbines to nearly 2 million customers in Nevada, California, and Arizona. Today, there are 15 dams on the Colorado River that provide recreation as well as hydroelectric power and water to many metropolitan communities across the West. This just touches the surface of what you would find at the museum. A lot has changed since the library was dedicated in 1962 by great-granddad and his good friend, President Harry Truman. It serves as a depository of his presidential and Secretary of Commerce papers, artifacts, and many other items. The library has been expanded 3 times since then, and the last in 1992, when Ronald Reagan was there to dedicate the building. Now, the museum and library, it's still by far the smallest of all 13 NAR presidential libraries, but as great-granddad would say, if his library is anything like the federal government, it will certainly grow over time. And it did grow. It grew over the first 30 years of existence. In '92, the library was transformed and visitation reached record levels. Many Iowans and Americans learned and were inspired by the Hoover story in a new way. Since then, the method of presenting a captivating and immersive visitor experience has changed dramatically. Think about this. Think about 28 years ago. 28 years ago, we would have a cell phone, right, that might have been in a bag or a briefcase that we carried around with us, right? And maybe we were using that cell phone in our car on the way to Blockbuster Video, where we were picking up Arnold Schwarzenegger's latest release, Total Recall. And then perhaps when you were returning that videotape, you had to make sure it was rewound. Otherwise, you had to pay the rewind fee, right? Well, now today, we just use this. We have tens of thousands of movies and different videos that we can see on our phones and watch it all in our hand. And by the way, no rewind fees. Also 28 years ago, Microsoft launched Windows 3.0. This fascinating invention allowed you to run more than one program at once. Think of that. You could run Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPerfect at the same time. But you couldn't run that third program because you knew you would crash your machine. The other big feature of Windows 3.0 was you could now use a mouse to run your IBM compatible computer. Yes, a lot has changed since 1992. And so here we are in 2020, and the museum is showing its age. The nearly 30-year-old Hoover Museum has lettering falling off that tell the stories of his post-presidential years. Flat screen televisions were replaced by broken tube TVs, or they replaced the broken tube TVs many years ago, and they don't fit the cutouts correctly. Interactive exhibits that had with parts from 30 years ago cannot be repaired because those parts are no longer made. Yes, it is time to update the museum. Fortunately, we have a dedicated board of trustees that are looking forward to the future. Earlier this year, a concept design firm was chosen to put together a plan to renovate the museum galleries and, like the federal government, possibly expand the building. It is very early in the process, but the goal is to have an updated, an updated, interactive, and immersive museum exhibit to engage all visitors about Herbert Hoover. And just like 1992, the museum can be made new again with new generations seeing the museum for the first time and some seeing it again with a new experience. Young people of Iowa can be inspired to become the next leader to help millions of Americans from a devastating flood, like the Mississippi River flood in 1927, when Granddad organized a relief effort that helped millions of Americans. Or perhaps your son or daughter could go to West Branch and be inspired to be the next person to organize famine reliefs that could save tens of millions of people, like was done in World War I or World War II. Or simply, go and learn to make a difference in somebody else's life. This is one of the most inspiring stories in American history, or perhaps even world history. And it's only 2 hours from here, waiting to be told, waiting to inspire Iowans and waiting to inspire Americans alike. Now, not only will we be seeking funds from the private sector for the renovation, but the Hoover Presidential Foundation will also be seeking funds from state capital. You may have seen or heard about a legislative bill that has been introduced in the Iowa legislature called the Hoover Tax Credit. It is a one-time request of the state of Iowa, which is mirrored after the Endow Iowa tax credit. Essentially, it will be a 25% tax credit on your Iowa taxes if you choose to support and donate to the Hoover Museum renovation project. We still have to raise the money, but with a 25% incentive for Iowans to donate, we would like to make this an Iowa project that all who want to participate can. If you have a friend who is in the legislature here in Des Moines, please pass this message along about the importance and significance of this wonderful museum. The legislature is adjourned for the year and will reconvene next January in 2021. That's when we will introduce the Hoover Tax Credit Bill and actively seek its passage. We know we have a lot of work to do, but we think this is a great brick and mortar project that we can all be proud of. The fact is, great-granddad could have placed his presidential library anywhere, but he and the family felt a pull back to where his life began, back to West Branch. He always viewed West Branch through the eyes of a child, where he had many fond memories growing up until he was orphaned at the age of 9 and then went to live in Oregon with his uncle by the age of 10. It is in Iowa here that this was the beginning of a remarkable story. It is here where Iowans can also be inspired to create their own uncommon story. Now, our goal is to have a grand rededication to the Hoover Library and Museum by August 10th, 2024, which, by the way, would be great-granddad's 150th birthday. So we'd love to see you all there for that grand dedication. And I want to thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here with you today to share some stories about great-granddad and the library. And if we have time for some questions, I'm happy to take them.
That doesn't mean you have 30 seconds to answer the question.
Oh.
Allan, it was good to meet you a little bit ago. Thank you for coming here, sharing the retrospective on your great-grandfather. You mentioned world history, and I thought one question might be this. Lou Henry Hoover, who was born in Waterloo, and I share that if Jim Slife is watching on Zoom, our shared hometown. But the president and Mrs. Hoover, as a young couple, were in China over 100 years ago during the Boxer Rebellion, and the story of her heroism and that experience, every time you read it, is remarkable. So you might expound on that a little bit if you'd like. Thank you.
Yeah, no, so during great-granddad's mining career, he worked on many different continents, perhaps all of them except for Antarctica. And he was in China working with the Chinese government on their interests. And he had been recently married to my great-grandmother, Lou Henry. And they started their life in Tianjin, China, if I pronounced that correctly. And she had a lot of courage about her. The story about her is when Tianjin was under siege from the Boxers, she would sweep the bullets off of the porch. And she was a pretty remarkable woman. She learned Chinese when she was there, well, perhaps Mandarin, but she was fluent in 7 languages. On boat rides, so when they eventually left Tianjin and escaped the Boxer Rebellion, the Marines came and saved them Apparently, as the Marines came to save the American contingent, they played "It's Going to Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight." Um, but then later on, she really led a really remarkable life. She was also a Stanford graduate, and she helped great-granddad translate the Agricola. So the Agricola was a very large volume of mining, but it was all in an old Latin, and it hadn't been translated. So there was all these mining secrets in this large book. And so between her and great-granddad, I think because of her linguistic skills, she really did a lot of work with that. They were able to unlock a lot of mining technology and innovation from that work. And they actually won many awards, not just Herbert Hoover, but Lou did because of her part in it. She was also president of the Girl Scouts for a number of years. So if you have ever bought a Girl Scout cookie, that was born of when she was president. It was, I believe it might have even been her idea to have the Girl Scout cookies. But yeah, she was quite a remarkable woman. Unfortunately, she died relatively young in 1946. Granddad went on to live another, let's see if I can do the math right quickly, another almost 20 years. We'll just say that. But yeah, she was remarkable. Another Iowan, which really it's a big tribute to Iowa, I think, to have two remarkable people from this state that really made a tremendous impact in the world. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you for being here. As you think about the library catching it up to more current standards, and then looking ahead, what does the library look like 30 years from now? Can you talk about the digital format that the library is in today and where you see that going?
Well, I may have to defer some of that to Jerry. He's the executive director of the Hoover Presidential Foundation. But, I just think about 30 years ago when I went into the library after the renovation last time. And I remember as a young boy, I went into the museum and it was glass cases. And you just kind of walked from one glass case to the next, and it really wasn't very immersive. You just looked at different artifacts and letters and you read different texts. There wasn't really anything to it. But then when they renovated in '92 under Richard Norton Smith, it was just a huge change of actually walking through his life, and it made it such a much more memorable experience. And I remember distinctly that was a big change to me and our family, was, wow, this tells a story in such a terrific way. And that was almost 30 years ago. And so we've hired BRC, who they've also done the Lincoln Library in Springfield, if anybody's been there. And they do a terrific job of being able to tell a story. In fact, we're going to learn a little bit about it tomorrow. We're all really excited to see what their ideas are. But it is something that my cousin Margaret and myself and Lieutenant Governor Adam Gregg and many others, we've been involved with the planning of this. As far as the technology in the future, to be honest, we're kind of leaving that to BRC. If you've been to the Lincoln Library, they have some really, really interesting and neat technological things they have going on. Like they have one case, I think, of Lincoln where it's a hologram of Lincoln, which is it's pretty memorable to see that. And then the layout of the museum was different. So it's hard to say what it's going to be. And then, 30 years from now, hopefully we don't wait 30 years to do this again, because most museums, I believe, generally change after 15, 20. I think some of the presidential libraries have even changed after 5 years. So I think we have our work cut out for us, and we're all very excited and eager for the challenge to retell this great story.
I have a question about the physical layout. The museum is just part of a larger complex, of course, that's integrated with the National Park Service. So as you're talking about this upgrade to the museum, does that also include additional upgrades to the park area, or the area where all the other external artifacts are located, as well as the National Park facility itself, which is a very nice visitor center and does a nice job at the front side. Are you working in conjunction with all those other extended interests as well, or are we just talking about the museum component? And if one additional question, are you talking about a physical expansion or just strictly an internal renovation and new displays?
Yes, all right, well, thank you. Well, so this presidential library is unique in that it is on a national park site. I'm not aware if any of the other presidential museums are on a national park site, but we are. So there's the Park Service, which is its own government entity, and then there's the Hoover Library Museum, which is a part of the National Administration of Records Administration, NARA. So two separate funding sources, two separate entities. The Hoover Presidential Foundation is the fundraising arm, and we support both of those entities. In this particular case, the library renovation is purely the National Archives Records and Administration portion of it. Now, if we expand the footprint of the library, we do need to talk to the National Park Service and say, hey, we would like to expand the footprint of the building. We need to talk. And so then there's a negotiation that would presumably go on with that. And it could be very challenging because now you're talking not just one government entity, but you're talking two. But I think we have first of all, the person who is Tom Schwartz of the director of the library, the NARA component is terrific. And Pete Swisher, who is the superintendent of the National Park site, he's also just great. Probably one of the best we've had in years. And so I say that because it really comes down to a cooperative relationship amongst all of us, these different entities. And so I think that gives us an advantage where we could probably expand the footprint. But there is coordination with those different entities to do. And then I'm sorry, I think there was another portion of your question I may have missed.
Of the facilities that the Park Service has as well. Are they going to be doing that in conjunction with the work that you're doing at the museum, or those two separate deals? I think you partially answered that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, thank you. So the Park Service Visitor Center is a complete and separate building, and it's funded differently. I believe they have done some upgrades over the last 10 or 15 years, independent of the Library Museum. But right now, the main focus is the Library Museum, because that hasn't been updated in, like we said, almost 30 years.
For those of you last week, I texted my question to Kitty. I decided not to do that this time. Decided to walk over here and ask. I assume you have a budget established for all these improvements, and if you do, could you share that with us?
Yeah, well, so I can't give a real straight answer on that because it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of a situation. We have a list of things that we would like to do. We would like to upgrade the facilities. We would like to possibly expand it. We would like to possibly update the offices, possibly even add a education center. But so all those things have a price, which we're in the process of figuring that out with BRC. And then there's the other side of what is the capacity of being able to do this. And that's where the Hoover tax credit is so important, is that if that legislation is passed, that enables the campus to upgrade and do more things. So with that said, correct me if I'm wrong, I might get a good stare from Jerry here, but it could be anywhere from $5 million to $20 million for the upgrades. Okay, all right, I got the nod there. Okay, good. Okay. Well, I guess that's all the questions. Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and I'll be here afterwards to visit further if needed, and happy to always talk about Great Granddad. Just it's always a pleasure and an honor to be a part of it. And thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, Allan, fellow engineer, for spending time with our club today, both that are here present and those viewing online. Did we hit 1 million this week? I think, we were 8 short last week of 1 million. Are we close again? We're close, he says. All right. Well, in honor of your visit, we're going to be donating the book Uncle Bert from the Presidential Library that you brought with you today to the Downtown School Library in your honor. And Allan has inscribed some words of wisdom here. Very much appreciate that. How could I get a copy of this? All right. Could I get more than one if I made such a donation? All right. Well, thank you. This might be an interesting book to read. I want to thank everyone for being here in person today with us, and again, those online watching. And if you, of course, if you didn't have a chance to tune in today, you can go to our website and click on the link to watch it on YouTube at another time. And we have some upcoming meetings, of course. Hopefully they will continue to be here, but if not, please bear with us. Next week, we have Tracy and Michael Wyatt. And if you remember, last week I mentioned they are 2 retired FBI agents, which I understand live not very far from Kitty. Maybe they were assigned to watch her, I'm not sure. And of course, what they're going to speak about is life on a worm farm. So apparently that's what FBI agents do after they retire. On August 20th, we have Renee Hardman, the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters, to speak to us. And on August 27th, direct from Boone, Iowa, our District 6000 Governor, Steve Dakin, is going to be speaking with us. Again, we appreciate your cooperation the last few months on dealing with everything we've had to go through and our new procedures for meetings, both here in person and online. And again, there's always a live streaming option if you can't attend here or don't feel comfortable to attend, and you can safely watch from your home or office or your home office. That's what the case is. And again, thank you for being with us today and being a part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines experience. And again, we are limiting our attendance to no more than 70 Rotarians here. And you must RSVP by Monday at 10 a.m. for that week's meeting. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.